twists, turns, bumps, and loop-the-loops, roller coasters just might be one of the best things in the world, right? But as you go on riding roller coasters, pushing your fears to their very limit, have you ever thought about what it is that makes these rides work? In this video, we're taking a look at how roller coasters work. For starters, how would you define a roller coaster? Other than the fact that it's the best thing to experience on a hot summer day as you scream your lungs out in sync with the ride's up and downs? Well, it's a little more complex than just that. If you've ever noticed, roller coaster cars don't have any kind of engines, unlike any other ride that moves across tracks. So essentially, these rides have no external form of energy that powers them to move. But then, how do they manage to do it? With the help of a fun little thing that scientists like to call potential energy. The thing is that all kinds of vehicles don't necessarily need engines to make them go, but what they do need is some. So when you get on a roller coaster and the ride begins, the roller coaster has to be pulled up to the top of the track, also known as the highest point of the ride, and then released. So how do roller coasters actually move? Well, usually there's an electric motor or a winch of sorts that is used to take the roller coaster all the way up. This is where the anticipation builds, as you hear the chain clanking while going up the hill. When the roller coaster reaches the tipping point, that's where gravity takes over, and you come flying down. But wait, because it's not as easy as that. The energy that the electric motor has used to pull the roller coaster up the hill doesn't just go away. What happens is that the roller coaster carts just store all this energy inside them, and that is what they use to move down the slide. This stored energy is called potential energy, simply because it has the potential to be stored and used when needed. This potential energy then turns into kinetic energy as the roller coaster moves downwards. Potential energy is essentially the energy an object has because of its relation to its position. For example, a boulder on top of a hill has tons of potential energy since it can roll down at any second, but kinetic energy, on the other hand, is what makes an object move. So if the boulder does roll down, that's when it has turned its potential energy into kinetic energy. The same rule can easily be applied to a roller coaster cart. Pretty simple, right? Not just roller coasters, but a lot of rides use this transfer of potential kinetic energy to run along tracks. But the amount of kinetic energy that a ride moves with depends on its own speed and mass. As far as roller coasters go, the maximum kinetic energy is released when the ride is just at the bottom of the track. And once the roller coaster begins to climb up all over again, the kinetic energy is once again converted into potential energy. Next, we have Newton's laws of motion. For all you physics enthusiasts out there, roller coasters essentially work primarily on the principles of Newton's first law of motion, which states that an object in motion stays in motion unless it is acted upon by an external force. How that works is that roller coasters maintain their velocity when they're going up and coming down, simply because they don't hit any kind of barriers in the way. The transfer of potential energy into kinetic energy is almost instant as the cart goes over the hill. So when you see a roller coaster with multiple hills, that just means that the designers have used physics to keep the ride moving without any form of external energy. But that doesn't mean that roller coasters can keep going on forever. The thing with potential energy is that it still has some limits. So at the start of the ride, your cart will have a certain amount of potential energy. And no matter how long your ride goes on, this energy remains the same. Sure, the cart keeps switching back and forth between potential and kinetic energy. So every time you go up the hill, the cart gains potential energy at the loss of some kinetic energy, hence the slowing down. Every time you come down, it gains kinetic energy. But at the end of the day, the total energy always remains the same. This is also why roller coasters always go slower when the carts are up at a height and faster when they are coming down from it. And now, the energy exchange. According to Newton's law, as long as the energy keeps changing between its two forms, a roller coaster ride would essentially never end. While that does work in theory, in reality, there's something that stops this from happening. That thing is called friction. Friction occurs when the wheels of your roller coaster cart rub against the track. So while there is no apparent barrier stopping your ride from moving, friction and air resistance tend to use up some of the energy that the carts are using to move. This means that the condition of Newton's first law isn't being fulfilled all the way here. As the ride continues, the cars keep losing small amounts of energy to these external forces, and since they have no engines, there's no way to replace this lost energy. If you've ever noticed, the loops on a roller coaster get smaller and smaller as the ride nears its end. This is because, by the end of it all, the cars simply don't have enough energy to keep going. So if the loops don't become small, chances are that you might get stuck upside down in one of the loops with no way to escape, since there's nothing powering the carts to move. So, by design, roller coasters are meant to follow the laws of physics at all times, since that is essentially what keeps the ride moving. So the next time you go on a roller coaster, be mindful mindful of the fact that all the curves, hills, loops, and twists are placed where they are very intentionally to make up for all the energy that is shifting and being lost. The highest elements of the ride come at the very start, when the carts have the most amount of stored potential energy, and the smaller elements come last as the energy starts dying down. Up next, the thrill of it all. Most of us don't really realize it, but it's this constant shift in energies that makes roller coasters so exciting. The anticipation incites a psychological response in all of us, and as the speed of the ride shifts, our senses are heightened and the adrenaline kicks in. Your heart pumps fast, your blood pressure increases, and all of these changes in forces almost feel nice, despite how sudden they are. But don't be fooled, because these forces aren't the same thing as energies. In simple words, energy is what makes a roller coaster go, but forces are what make you feel all the things that you feel as you take the ride. So while you can't see these forces pushing and pulling against each other, they are responsible for making you feel light one minute and heavy the next, as the roller coaster moves up and down, going in and out of loops. All of these forces don't just act on the ride, they also act on your body, pulling you forward and pushing you back as the ride moves. Of course, we can't forget braking. When you've covered all of the ups and downs of a roller coaster, it's also important to understand how the ride stops. Most roller coasters are built with brakes that are lying beneath the carts. These brakes use compressed air to stay open. This means that if the ride ever happens to run out of energy, the brakes will automatically close themselves and stop the ride before things get out of hand. This is a step up from older roller coasters that used friction brakes, which were harder to operate. Today, modern roller coasters also come with magnetically controlled brakes that make the experience much safer than it used to be. Finally, safety mechanisms. Even with everything working perfectly, accidents do happen, which is why most roller coasters also come with safety mechanisms that you can't always see. Oftentimes, these rides have to be built with multiple safety systems to make sure that things always stay in control. Some of these include computer blocking, where the ride is actually linked to computer systems that use photo sensors and cameras to track the entirety of the ride. If the train is observed to not be passing checkpoints or malfunctioning in any way, the entire ride is stopped for the crew to perform a safety check. Some roller coasters also use mechanical safety systems, such as multi-directional wheels, to make sure that the ride stays on track and doesn't start traveling backward all of a sudden, even if its chains were to break. Lastly, no roller coaster is complete without all the necessary passenger restraints, including lap bars, shoulder harnesses, and seat belts that secure you as you go up and down, inside and outside of loops, spirals, and helixes, making sure that you have the best time of your life while also not having to be scared for your life. So the next time you go on a roller coaster, think about all the elements that are at play to help you seek the thrill that comes with this universal ride. That's a wrap for today. See you next time.